In today's conversation, I get to talk with Sam Kabert. He is an expert on work-life balance. He calls it soul life balance, and he's going to explain a little bit more about what that means. I know for any freelancing or entrepreneur parent out there, having that balance is extremely important because the whole purpose of what we're doing here is to help you know how you can earn more money in less time working from home so that you can spend the time you want with your family, the time that they really deserve. Sam, he spent a lot of his early career building up a lot of success. He's built million-dollar businesses, but throughout that whole time, he was able to only work a few hours per day, and his path led him to being named in Silicon Valley's 40 under 40 list at the age of 31. And it took some time for him to eventually realize that he wasn't overly happy, even though he had a lot of success, because he didn't understand that soul life balance part of the equation. And he'll talk about that today. Sam's overall mission is to reframe the way that we look at our lives as it relates to work and realize where work should be placed in the formula that is enjoying our life. Sam's also going to talk a little bit about how to make money as a content creator, because we talk about all sorts of different types of freelancing and entrepreneurial stuff that you could do working from home. And one of those things is being a content creator, whether you're creating videos on YouTube, blog posts, whatever it is you're creating. How do you make money creating content? Sam's going to discuss some tips with you today on what the possibilities are with that. Welcome to the show, Go Back to Bed, where we wake up early to discuss how to balance and build a business and a family when they're all under the same roof. Whether you call yourself a freelancer, entrepreneur, or small business owner, you love working at home, or you would like to, because family comes first. I'm Chad Grevalese, and I am a full-time husband and dad first, part-time entrepreneur, work-from-home enthusiast, and self-employment advocate. In our conversations, you won't just learn philosophy, you'll get practical advice from me and other self-employed families so that you can start your day with clear priorities and confidence to pursue your goals. Join our conversations so you can create the work-life balance that every family needs. Glad you're here. You are an expert when it comes to work-life balance, and you're going to reframe that a bit for us and give us a different description of what that really means. First, I want you to introduce yourself to those who are listening and watching on a bit about how you built your business and whatever you've been involved in on only a few hours a day of working. You've really figured out how to master having the right balance and having the right approach to building up success. And a lot of this audience they're busy raising families, and they want to figure out how to earn more money in less time working from home. And we'd love to hear a little bit about your story and what you've managed to achieve.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chad. So I've been an entrepreneur pretty much since day one of my career. I started my business in college, and that was about 10 years ago. So it's been going strong ever since. And I initially had employees, and this is back I started in 2011, probably around 2013, 14. I had gotten interested in working with virtual assistants, Tim Ferriss, right? Everyone knows Tim Ferriss these days, but they might be more familiar with his podcast or whatever it might be. But really what got him started, in my opinion, at least, was the 4-Hour Work Week. And I read that book and was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's cool. And he has this concept of the NR, which stands for the new rich. And basically it comes down to what is the amount of money you need to make on a monthly basis to live your dream lifestyle, right? And then building it around that. And one of the things he talks about is working with freelancers. So when I first got started, I like to joke, it was kind of like going to the candy store and filling up on samples. We all do that 5-finger discount on taffy, and then you end up buying something and then you're already full from the taffy, and then you're kind of disappointed when you walk away. And that's what it was like for me when I first started working with virtual assistants. I went to Fiverr.com, which is a website where you can hire people, freelancers, VAs, whatever, for pretty much anything for like $5 at minimum for a task. So I didn't know what I really wanted done, but I would do these different things, like maybe a whiteboard drawing or whatever. And it was like sampling it because it was only $5, right? But at the end of the day, it was just like it wasn't moving the needle, and it was just like whatever. So I kind of forgot about it for a few years. That is until I started my first podcast, and we launched in January of 2017. And I quickly realized that I did not want to be doing the editing of the audio. I didn't want to build a website, do the IT stuff. I didn't want to do graphic design, any of that. So right off the bat, there was opportunities to work with VAs that made a lot of sense. I had employees in my business, but the podcast was to drive it was lead gen. Essentially, it's a funnel to drive to the business, right? So instead of like me one day just waking up being like, oh, how can I put VAs in my business? I kind of accidentally fell into it through the podcast. And since then, I've had 5 of my own podcasts. I've managed 4 others, so a total of 9 or something, a couple YouTube shows. So I've done video editing. I wrote 3 books in a year. So really serial content creator. And I'd say I'm going back and forth, but after about a year or so of working with VAs on that initial podcast, I had an employee that I had to let go. Then my right hand man in my business, he gave us 2 weeks, and I joked that I did what all great entrepreneurs did. I do when something like that happens. I ordered a pizza and I got a 6-pack of beer, and I said I'm not going to bed until I figure this out. And that's why I made the conscious decision to just move forward in my business with a virtual assistant model. And now it's probably been about 4 years that we've been going just VAs. So with all my various projects, content creation, I have a couple businesses now. Everything is managed by VAs. I probably have a core team of like 8 virtual assistants, but up to like 15 for different things and backups. But yeah, my new business, I teach entrepreneurs how to scale their business by building out virtual assistant teams.
That's great. So is that the main thing you're involved in now?
Kind of, sort of. I kind of dance back between the 2 businesses because they don't require too much time. So it's kind of just where my intention needs to go, because I've built out both of my businesses so that the team really is running it and I don't have to really be involved too much. I check both email inboxes multiple times a day. But I wouldn't say I have like a larger focus on one than the other. Maybe a larger focus on the VA one because that's where I want to go. It's called Clone Yourself. That's the name of the business. And I'm still growing it. It's only been 2 years. Whereas Swagworks, my first business I started back in college 10 years ago, that business is rocking and rolling. So I don't really need to do too much there.
Gotcha. Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing a bit about that. That really is the key there with hiring virtual assistants. That's how I've been able to scale my business beyond. I started out as a freelancer and got to a point where I couldn't continue to increase my income just trading hours for money, but at least I liked being able to be self-employed. And then starting to hire other freelancers to take on certain aspects of the business really made a big difference. So you talked about being a serial content creator. Is that what do you love most doing with the different, as you've explored doing things yourself and then hiring various things out? It seems as if you do certainly enjoy creating content. Where is the spot that you enjoy the most, that you really thrive in, when it and everything else you'd rather hire out for?
I mean, yeah, you pretty much nailed it. I like creating the content. So I have 2 podcasts currently, and I have a food show on YouTube with a co-host, but that kind of got pushed to the back burner with the pandemic. We probably had like 30 plus like quality videos, like really good, like a local version of diners, drive-ins, and dives, kind of based in Silicon Valley. That's the area in which I live. So that one was really fun, but we don't really get to do that one anymore. I have another video series that I only do every now and then. It's called Brochuality, where I break down hidden spiritual themes and bro-y type comedy movies. And that's really fun to do. But again, like both of those projects, the videos and the podcast, like I'm just like actually creating the content, not editing the content. And now I'm starting my 4th book, and same thing. Like I'm really passionate about what the book's about and the actual writing of the book, but Also, I won't be, the editor for my own book. I won't be doing the graphic design for it. I won't be, making all the marketing materials and all that sort of thing. I'll be doing the writing. So yeah, to answer your question, I definitely do enjoy creating content more than anything.
Yeah. So how does somebody make money creating content? For those that are not familiar with that, they're a consumer of content, but they haven't really created content. They're trying to figure out what type of online business to create that they can, for the most part, do from home. So how does a content creator make money? How can they support themselves and their families doing that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And the truth is, most of us aren't going to have the downloads or the views or the reach really to have ads and really have ads replace our business and be like, oh yeah, I'm just a content creator. Because for anyone listening, you guys can check me out on social media, and I have a very small following, and I haven't been able to grow it yet. I've been very profitable with my content because I've been strategic. In the first 12 months of launching my first podcast, I was $60,000 net positive in the podcast in terms of lead gen because it funneled to my swag business. So to back up, a lot of people think about creating content to sell to their audience. And the truth is, most of us aren't going to have that reach. Some people break through, but most people won't be able to. And if you don't have a large enough net, then you're not going to have people taking you up on your offers. If you have a high ticket product that you're selling or that you're representing and there's a large commission, then yeah, possibly. But for most of us that listen to, like, say, Joe Rogan, who's one of the biggest podcasters, and you listen to his ads, most of his ads are going to be a small percent. Like, it's not like a big sale, like thousands of dollars. Take Alpha Brain, one of Onnit's products that sells for maybe $60 or something. He would need to have a lot of people use his code to Alpha Brain to make any money, which luckily for him, he has tons of followers, right? But for most of us, we're not going to have that. So if you can align yourself with a product that you're representing that's a larger sale, that would be one way to sell to your audience. But what I like to do is more create relationships with the guests on my show and build a show that is strategic to something that matches my target demographic. So for example, my first podcast was a movers and shakers show in Silicon Valley, and I sell swag, promotional products, right? So I would interview with my co-hosts, these people doing big things in Silicon Valley. They're all executives, and I've always believed in the principle of law of reciprocity, which basically means like you give first. This is the give first economy, right? So when I was really hard in sales, building up my business, I would have a lot of products that either had my own company logo on it, where, they would be gifts for clients, or when I had the podcast, if it was a bigger client, I might print something with their logo. Point being, when I come in to do the interview, the first thing I do is put some sweet quality promotional products, swag, on the table. And they're like, oh, you don't do the podcast full time? And then my co-host would be like, oh no, he sells swag. We call him Swag Sam. And then they're like, oh, why don't we buy our swag from you? And then I go, oh, I don't know. Why don't you? And then they tell, Susie admin, like, hey, look into working with Sam, and then boom, deal closed. So that's really how I've monetized the first business. And to recap, it's by building relationships with your guests and strategic partners as well. It could be sponsors, whatever. And I'll talk about sponsors in a second, and have that audience that you're interviewing for your podcast, that you're inviting onto your guests or inviting onto your show to be a guest, match your target demographic. So in terms of like sponsors, I know I mentioned like ads on your podcast. We got creative, in late 2016, I started seeing some friends getting into content creation, some other things. And I really had the bug because I was a guy in Silicon Valley selling promotional products. Like no one cares about that. Like I had a huge chip on my shoulder. I was on the board of a couple nonprofits. The first one at age 23. I chaired a young professionals group called Silicon Valley Young Professionals. And it was all great networking, but I knew I needed something more. So that was kind of like the itch to get into content creation. And then from there, since we had this podcast called What Up Silicon Valley, and at the time in Silicon Valley, even still now, it's kind of stale. It's not as the heart of Silicon Valley, San Jose. It's not San Francisco, and San Jose is a very old school community. So there were certain business networking groups like the Silicon Valley Capital Club, the Silicon Valley Business Journal, that saw what we were doing and they said, we want to support you guys. Then they would share our podcast and we had them be a sponsor, like all this different stuff, which helped us with our reach as well. So there's just a few ideas that have worked for me.
Definitely. Well, those are really great ideas. And it seems like by leveraging those relationships, you are able to really make the most use of your time, that as you create content, you're getting quite a bit of money from that content, that maybe you spend a couple of hours putting together some content or a show, and what you can get out of that from sponsors and from funneling people into your business really does compound quite a bit, where you're not just getting $25 an hour for the time you put in. It really adds up when you add all those things together. Tell us a little bit about soul life balance, and what does that mean and how do we achieve that?
Absolutely. So this whole thing of work-life balance, it always resonated with me. I always loved it. I'm 33 right now, and I think I first heard work-life balance in high school or something, still a kid. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good for like a career, to have that type of ability to, not be consumed by work or whatever. And it's always been painted as this great picture. Well, I've had a lot of success in my career, and recently I was named to Silicon Valley's 40 under 40. I think I was 31 at the time as well. And I kept achieving all these goals. I was crushing it in sales, profits, really, not even sales, profits. And my girlfriend at the time was professional. She was a cheerleader for my favorite football team. I had everything I wanted, but I wasn't happy. And I was actually really depressed. And that led me to ayahuasca, which is a plant medicine for healing. And after I sat with this medicine, it really was the healing, and it opened me up to spirituality. I went deep down the path of spirituality. But one of the first things that came to me in sitting with this medicine was the concept of soul life balance rather than work life balance. And what happened was, for me, was I kept chasing goals for that dopamine hit of achieving a goal. But what happens after that? Then you're left with nothing, right? Because it's only in the moment that you get that dopamine rush. So I was essentially an addict to work, right? And I thought in a lot of ways that I had work-life balance, and I did. I had work balance, as you point out, Chad. I was only working a few hours a day. It's not like I was overworking. Yes, I had big goals and stuff, but I didn't have a connection to my higher self, to my soul, to anything. And whether you are spiritual, religious, agnostic, whatever the case may be, we all have certain things that just kind of put us back and are like, oh, this feels really good. And I don't want to get too far down into spirituality to say like meditation or journaling or things like that. I'm talking about simple things like looking at a sunset or walking around, your neighborhood without your shoes, which is called earthing, and being connected to the ground. Like there can be really simple things that just like help you breathe, intentional breaths, right? So the whole idea of soul life balance rather than work life balance is a reframe where we realize work is just a component of life, and we don't put as big an emphasis on work, and we put more of of an emphasis of feeding our soul, connecting with our soul on a daily basis. What that looks like is different for everyone. I mentioned a few things. For me, I love yoga. I love breath work. I do love walking around my neighborhood without shoes and just being connected to the earth. And those are just some simple things that aren't too, intimidating for the common person. But the point here is like, this is part of the programming of society, like we're told like this work-life balance thing, and it's made to sound great. Like, oh, we glorify being a weekend warrior. Well, what is that really saying? Oh, we're going to work all week so that we can have 2 days and go hard and actually enjoy our life. And what right does that actually make sense? We save all our money for retirement so that when we're old, we can enjoy ourselves in our free time and travel. That doesn't make sense either. So if you think about it and you really start to unpack the propaganda that is work-life balance, it's to keep us satisfied, to keep us from asking questions and just be like, oh yeah, life is good. Like I have this trip plan, I have this vacation, and we have this PTO saved up. But in reality, that's no way to live, right? So that's why my proposal is around soul life balance, where we start to, have these vacations or these trips or these things we do outside of work that really connect us to ourselves more often than, just spending our lives working.
Thanks for explaining that. And I love how you brought up those simple things that we can do, because we do get, sometimes we attach enjoying life to that vacation we take once a year. Oh, I have time off, just like you talked about. But then you're missing life in between. Life happens every single day. And it's those simple things that we can do to connect with ourselves, to connect with others, to connect with the world around us. That's what brings that joy. So thank you for explaining that to us, because that really is as we're trying to build up a business from home, we need to be able to know how to have that connection and have that joy throughout. Because then, like you said, what's the point? You get the dopamine hit when you achieve your goal, and then now what? What's next? And why just wait until you're in your 60s to start living life? And there's so many ways that we can achieve that now. For those that want to learn more about soul life balance and everything you're doing, how can they connect with you and find you? And also, maybe if you wanted, you can mention a little bit about either one of the books you've previously written or the one you're writing now, if you want.
Absolutely. Yeah. So connecting with me is easiest just going to samkabert.com, SAMKAB as in boy, ERT.com, or just follow me on Instagram, Sam Kabert. I talk a lot on Instagram about spiritual stuff. So if you're not into that, you might not be into that. But I do talk a lot about soul life balance. I am entering a sprint of finishing my book. It'll probably be published in December or January of 2022. So it's coming up soon. But as I, get closer to releasing the book, a lot of the content I am talking about is going to be even more centered around soul life balance. One of the books I wrote is called The Written Goal. If you're someone who struggles with accountability and whatnot, I would recommend checking out this book called The Written Goal. And Harvard released a study. I forget off the top of my head what the percentage is, but basically like you're 90% more likely to achieve your goals if you write down your goals. And this book is literally like worksheets that will help you. It's not just like a book that you read, it's more of a workbook. And the other book that you guys might be interested in is, I don't even know what it's called. This was my first book, and I did a terrible job with the title of it. It's like Working with Virtual Assistants or something. Like, it's a terrible title, but the book is great. So yeah, that's my book about working with VAs. And obviously Clone Yourself, cloneyourselfuniversity.com. There's a ton of free resources on that website. I have blogs, I have like almost 10 free downloads that will help you guys. In the first 15 episodes of the Clone Yourself podcast walk you through step by step on how to scale your business with VAs. So any of those resources, I call to you.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Sam, for telling us about those resources that we can really tap into to help grow our business. And I'm glad that you came on the show today.
Awesome, Chad. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sam. If you're interested in the things that he talked about, be sure to check out his website, his podcast, his books, all of that. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all the main podcast platforms, and subscribe there. Airlight.tv is where you'll find show notes for this episode and be able to find other episodes and other content and resources for you if you are trying to build up success as a freelancing parent. Hope you have a good day.